Let's travel back in time. The year is 2008. The New York Giants beat the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. Bernie Madoff was arrested for securities fraud after his sons turned him in for running one of the biggest Ponzi schemes. The release of the first Iron Man movie hit theaters, kicking off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The #1 song was Low by Flo Rida and T-Pain. I don't know that song, but it was #1 in 2008. And for me, I found myself once again in Iraq. But one event happened that got some attention. A man named Patrick Mahaffey discovered something very unique in his front yard. Well, actually, let's be clear. The landscaping crew he hired to dig a fish pond in his yard found something. The landscaping crew came across something kind of unique and interesting. As they were digging, they hit kind of a bit of resistance. An unfamiliar sound that maybe could have been a pipe or some sort of rock, but it was something pretty amazing. They brought this to the attention of Patrick Mahaffey. With a little bit more digging, Patrick and the landscaping crew unearthed 83 stone tools in his front yard. This is the Mahaffey cache. Now at first, Patrick thought these might have related to more of a kind of current Native American culture, but after taking the advice of a friend, he decided to contact the University of Colorado's anthropology department, specifically Dr. Douglas Bamforth, an expert in Paleo-Indian tools and the ancient people themselves. Dr. Bamforth was completely astounded with what Patrick uncovered in his front yard. After several months of analysis, with the help of different anthropologists and archaeologists, the results were in. That this specific set of stone tools dated to about 13,000 years ago, specifically to the last ice age. But more importantly, they were associated with the clovis culture that was hunting up and down the front range of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. After some edgeware analysis on the tools were found to have had bear blood, mammoth blood, camel blood, and horse blood on them. So these were actually used in a butchering process. When everything was said and done, this specific cache of 83 stone tools was referred to as the Mahaffey cache. Now the 83 tools themselves are made of a couple different types of chert, one of them being Kremling chert, which is found out in Kremling, Colorado. Now, these weren't hunting tools, these weren't projectiles or any sort of spearheads, they were specifically butchering tools. The tools themselves were described as very ergonomic. They fit perfectly in the hand and would have been great for butchering. Now the tools are on display in CU Boulder at the Natural History Museum, but a couple tools were actually reburied and returned back to the earth. This was on part of the Mahaffey, who believed that these tools should kind of be in their final resting place, and I agree completely. Now one of the interesting components about the Mahaffey cache is that when we compare it to other Clovis-based caches, some of the tools are almost identical. One in particular, known as the Fen cache, there are 2 tools in those caches that are nearly identical. Some people speculate they were made by the same person, or it was just kind of a cultural norm to build similar tools that look very much alike. But when you compare the 2 together, they almost look identical. Now I've had the opportunity to see the Mahaffey cache firsthand, and I can tell you it's a pretty elaborate cache consisting of the 83 stone tools. Some of the tools are very simple. They're just simple flakes or broken off pieces of stone that have that sharp edge. Some of them are more elaborate, more kind of large blades that would be used in butchering, specifically on mammoth, horse, camel, or even bear. The tools 13,000, 15, 20,000 years ago were simple in function and in design. They were designed for cutting. They were designed for butchering and processing. It was all about functionality. You've heard me say it before, it's about tools, not trophies. Now why this is significant for me is the Mahaffey cache is probably less than 20 miles away from where I'm at. More importantly, in my last bison butchering class, we actually incorporated many of the Mahaffey tools into that class. We had a variety of stone tools of hafted blades and then a lot of hand blades that would have resembled that Clovis culture. And in the design of those tools on my part, I based them highly off the Mahaffey cache. I was almost doing some of my own experimental archaeology to see how effective these tools were. Large hand blades to discoidal flakes to elongated flakes, all of them were very applicable in taking apart a 2,400 pound bison. Now a hafted blade that sits in a handle wrapped with sinew or maybe glued with pine pitch will give you different advantages. But as the students found out, and that I've known from just past work, they're gonna receive some wear and tear. That pine pitch is gonna start to react and eventually break. But a hand blade, a single hand blade, or even a simple stone flake can be used again and again and again. Yes, it can start to dull, but it can definitely be resharpened in that process and get back into action into the cutting. This is something I wanted the students to experience in that bison butchering class. And in that process of butchering the bison, we continuously broke stone flakes because it was almost easier to have a chunk of stone pop off a flake than it was to resharpen a flake or to turn a flake into a secondary cutting tool. And after kind of assessing the stone flakes that we had in our butchering class, you can clearly see in the Mahaffey cache, there are a large number of flakes, razor sharp edges that allow you to cut through a hide, cut through tough fur, or even membrane. The large bifacial blades, the large hand blades, even some of the simple hand axes are used for taking apart the meat, popping joints, sawing through bone, or cutting through cartilage. Every tool served a purpose. In the Mahaffey cache, we can see between the flakes as well as the large blades, there is a duality of the stone tool usage. When we were done with the bison butchering class, I asked some of the students what tools really resonated with them. What tools did they find to work the best? And I was surprised to hear that the hand blades were kind of the target. They were the target tool that they wanted to use, ultimately take apart that bison. Half the knives, yeah, they absolutely worked. But being that they're a little bit smaller and the edge was a little bit finer, they dulled out a little bit more quickly. So let's make one of the iconic blades from the Mahaffey cache. But before we start cracking, this is one of the hand blades I used in the last bison butchering class. You can see just how it's shaped and formed. It is very ovate. More importantly, it fits very nicely in my hand. This one was crafted, used, and sharpened again. And even when you look closely, you can see the animal residue from that bison on its edge. This sort of protein, this meat, was the same material that was left on those large bifaces in that Mahaffey cache. This was a hand blade that wasn't used. Out of the 60 or 70 different tools that were there, this one just never got used. I can't tell you why. It never made it into the hands of myself or a student, but in its simple design, very bifacial, it gives you the opportunity to hold in the hand this way, to cut away meat, even hold in sort of an elongated fashion like this and cut away meat. Why it wasn't used, I don't know. Now the rest of the hand blades and knives, those were all taken by the students. I made them for them, they can have them, that's their memory. But these are the stone flakes that were used. Some of them are elongated. Some of them are a little bit more bulky and a little bit more bulbous, still having that bulbar percussion. When I compare these to the Mahaffey cache, there's a lot of similar flakes. Some of them are a little bit more discoidal with the backing on them. Some of them are just smaller pieces and chunks. But it's not that these were made with any sort of great intent. When I made them, I was aiming to get some elongated flakes, some flakes that had some backing on them. When I look at the Mahaffey cache, many of those flakes are irregular in shape. Many of those flakes likely came from the actual processing and creation of a large hand blade. Now I'm all out of Kremling chert, so we're gonna use some Georgetown. Something like that right there. That's a butchering tool. I like this sort of style. It's got that bulbous end. It's got that razor sharp edge. This would have been a flake that was highly utilized. There we go. One Mahaffey styled hand blade. Got the hand blade. More importantly, all of these flakes along with the hand blade that could be used in that butchering process. You can compare my Mahaffey Cash clovis styled butchering hand blade to any of the other ones. Now, a couple of the takeaways from this for me, maybe for you at home, is simply this, that we need to consider that one stone spall can yield all sorts of tools. All these little flakes came off the hand blade. These are used for that slicing and cutting. This right here is used for that kind of sawing, hacking, large mass removal. Both tools come from the same stone. Stone tools are a great option. We have survived on this planet longer with stone tools than we have anything else. Longer than steel, longer than copper, bronze, you name it. Stone has been our way. It has allowed us to evolve from a very early species all the way up to the modern man that we are today. Hope you enjoyed. That was the Mahaffey Cache, not too far from where I'm at right now. Pretty cool site. You can see the Mahaffey Cache at CU Boulder in their Natural History Museum. But there you go. That's the Mahaffey Cache. Appreciate you watching.